Hey everyone, let's dive right into this explainer of Chapter 2, Pornography, the digital sedation of desire. Today, we're unpacking a massive, globally pervasive phenomenon. We're going to objectively explore the book's core arguments about how the modern landscape of digital erotica is systematically rewiring human desire. We'll be looking at the biological, psychological, and relational claims the author makes about this rapidly shifting landscape.
The text hits us right out of the gate with this overarching thesis. When desire is hijacked, humanity is hollowed. I mean, wow, right? This immediately signals that we aren't just talking about a private habit or some minor cultural trend here. According to the author, we're looking at a profound civilizational shift. The argument is that how we experience attraction, longing, and connection is literally being fundamentally altered by the screens we hold in our hands.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the next separation, rewiring the brain, gender symmetry, the male sedation hypothesis, female dissociation, and finally the erosion of intimacy. Let's get to it.
First up, Section 1, the next separation, the progression of disconnection.
Okay, so to really grasp this progression, think back to what we covered in Chapter 1. If hormonal birth control chemically severed the physical link between sex and reproduction, the author argues that pornography takes the exact next step in our culture. It severs sex from relational reality itself. You get a scenario where intimacy can be consumed without any vulnerability, without sacrifice, and without a shared reality.
And you know, this didn't just happen overnight. The author lays out a really clear timeline here. What was once discreetly bought in print form during the mid-20th century moved to the early internet and then became intensely private on our smartphones. But the real game changer? Algorithms. Modern pornography isn't a static magazine you just buy. It's a predictive machine. It's basically an infinite slot machine for human intimacy, delivered continuously via systems that literally learn and adapt to keep users constantly hooked. Moving into Section 2, rewiring the brain, the neuroscience of novelty. So what is this constant digital delivery actually doing to our heads? Well, the source material leans heavily into the concept of neuroplasticity. And hey, the text makes it clear this isn't some moralizing lecture, this is modern neuroscience. The human brain is plastic. It physically encodes patterns based on what it's exposed to. When dopamine, your brain's reward chemical, gets hijacked by high-speed, high-definition, limitless digital novelty, the brain learns to chase pleasure with zero effort. Literally, what you repeatedly consume, you become. This brilliantly illustrates the dopamine loop the book describes. It all kicks off with anticipation, driven by infinite digital novelty. But here's the catch. Our brains adapt. So eventually, a user hits diminishing returns, where what once shocked or aroused them just becomes completely normal. And that drives an inevitable escalation. People have to seek out more extreme, intense, or divergent stimuli just to feel that exact same baseline reward. The argument is that this isn't just about viewing extreme content. It's a structural change in how the brain processes everyday joy. All right, Section 3, gender symmetry. The medium differs, the mechanism does not. Now, this is absolutely fascinating. The book directly challenges the whole cultural narrative that this is strictly a guy problem. The author proposes a real symmetry here. While men heavily lean toward visual, immediate stimuli that simulate a sexual reward, women often lean toward narrative erotica, romance novels, or emotionally charged streaming dramas that offer a fantasy of significance. But the text is super clear on this. The medium differs, but the mechanism does not. Both activate the exact same neurological pathways, detaching real desire from an embodied covenant and hooking it onto a carefully curated fantasy. Next up, Section 4, the male sedation hypothesis, the decline of pursuit. Let's zoom in on how this high dopamine conditioning plays out for young men today. The text cites the male sedation hypothesis, a term coined by commentator Chris Williamson. The idea is that historically, male sexual energy was this massive external drive, channeled into courtship, competition, provision, and building institutions. But if sexual gratification can suddenly be accessed instantly, without risk, rejection, or responsibility, that drive diminishes. The text argues this doesn't look like chaos, it looks like passivity. It literally sedates ambition. And to put the physical fallout of this into perspective, the book points to clinical discussions about the sharp, unprecedented rise in erectile dysfunction. Studies are showing that upwards of 20 to 25% of healthy men under the age of 40 now experience symptoms. Think about that for a second. Upwards of a quarter of young, healthy guys. That is a staggering number.
The source material links this directly to the brain becoming so wired for infinite novelty and specific camera angles that real-life, unedited intimacy just struggles to compete. Moving on to Section 5, Female Dissociation, the Fantasy of Significance.
So, if men are being sedated by this environment, how does it psychologically impact women? The text argues that while men withdraw into passivity, women often experience what's termed dissociation. Their sense of self becomes unsettled. The digital environment fragments their identity into a public performance and a private self. It trains women to evaluate their worth using impossible pornographic standards. And worse, it creates this painful dissonance where real, imperfect men just can't compete with fictional devotion, and real relationships fall totally short of algorithmic affirmation.
Finally, Section 6, the erosion of intimacy, screen-to-skin simulation.
So, what actually happens when an entire generation grows up conditioned by this before marriage? The book argues the results are foundational. Intimacy becomes filtered and scripted. Our culture starts replacing soul-to-soul connection with solitary consumption. When you have men trained to seek release in isolation and women trained to constantly perform, the very social architecture that supports family formation weakens. We get an entire generation that begins to confuse constant, low-effort stimulation with actual, deep intimacy. Which brings us to this incredibly powerful observation from the source material. Pornography doesn't burn cities. It quietly empties out homes. It perfectly sums up the author's thesis. We're talking about a slow, invisible erosion of the trust, vulnerability, and continuity that modern relationships absolutely require to survive. The damage doesn't announce itself. It just slowly and quietly strips away the foundation of the home. As we get ready to move toward the later chapters, the author leaves us chewing on this provocative question. If we are shaped by platforms built to just give us quick hits without asking much in return, what kind of adults does this environment actually form? Are we completely forgetting our natural design in favor of convenient simulations? It's an absolutely critical concept to keep in mind as this explainer series continues tracking the book's overarching thesis.
Well, I really hope this deep dive into Chapter 2 helped clarify these complex arguments for you. To dig deeper into how all these concepts connect to the book's overall thesis and to support the author's work, please go check out the interactive companion site at pervertingourreproductivenature.com. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to keep questioning what's shaping your reality.